Hi, this is Kim Newlove, host of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. This is the fourth and final part of my 4-part PGX Pharmacists Series. If you missed the first 3 parts, it's no problem. You'll still understand what's going on with today's episode. Part 1 of this series featured Dan Krinsky. Part 2 featured Sue Paul. Part 3 was an interview with a pharmacy student named Mariam S. Yassin, and today's interview features Dr. Jamie Wilkey. You can find links to parts 1, 2, and 3 of this series in the show notes and on my website. To access those show notes, go to thepharmacistvoice.com and click on the podcast tab. Those are episodes 133, 135, and 137. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Again, my name is Kim Newlove. I am a pharmacist by training, University of Toledo College of Pharmacy, BS Pharm class of 2001. But I made a career transition to voice actor and podcast host. Among other things, I narrate audiobooks for women pharmacist authors, provide medical narration to clients in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries, and narrate content for explainer videos and e-learning projects. I was inspired by my nonverbal teenage son with autism to combine my identity as a pharmacist with my speaking voice and launch my voiceover business, The Pharmacist Voice, in 2017. My son Craig helped me realize the power of having a voice and using it. Each week, I alternate solo podcast episodes and interview shows. The solo shows are about some aspect of being a pharmacist, a voice actor, a pharmacist podcaster, or my career transition from pharmacist to voice actor and podcast host. My interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain so that you are inspired to use your voice too. This is episode 139, and you can find the show notes with links to anything mentioned today on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. You can also find my medical narration demo and a link to my online course, Pronounce Drug Names Like a Pro, on my website. That website again is thepharmacistvoice.com. As an Ohio pharmacist who graduated more than 20 years ago, I am curious about pharmacogenomics, which we abbreviate PGX. How do pharmacists use their voices in the pharmacogenomics space? How do they learn the science of PGX? How do they start their businesses and get paid? These are all questions that I've had. This series has given me the opportunity to learn the answers from Dan, Sue, Mariam, and Jamie, and I have really enjoyed our conversations. Today, you'll hear Dr. Jamie Wilkey talk about the PGX Consulting Confidence Academy, which focuses on the business side of running a pharmacogenomics practice. Pharmacists don't have a lot of business training. We usually don't learn that in school. So, if you're interested in creating your own pharmacogenomics practice, this episode will have a lot of value for you. Let me tell you a little bit more about my guest, Dr. Jamie Wilkey, then we'll dive right into our interview. Dr. Jamie Wilkey is a pharmacist who loves what she does and brings passion and happiness to the pharmacy profession. Jamie grew up in a small town in Wyoming where she got her start in pharmacy working at a local city drug. She earned her Doctor of Pharmacy degree from the University of Wyoming School of Pharmacy. Jamie has a community pharmacy background and is the mother of 4 young boys. Frustrated by the stress and schedule of her community pharmacy job, she created a job for herself that better suits her talents, her passions, and her family's busy schedule. She abruptly jumped out of retail and into the world of entrepreneurship, where she found her true calling in life. She is the founder and CEO of Arches Health, LLC. After getting her own pharmacogenomics practice up, Jamie began to empower other pharmacists to do the same. She teaches pharmacists in her online program and active network called PGX Consulting Confidence Academy to confidently champion PGX and create their own consulting practices that bring the flexibility, freedom, and satisfaction they are seeking from their careers. Jamie is optimistic about the future of pharmacy and knows that great things are in store for pharmacists who are willing to push boundaries, think big, and use the full extent of their education. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Jamie Wilkey. Hi, Jamie. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. How are you?
I'm so well. Thank you, Kim.
It's good to have you here with me. I'm happy that you could be part of my PGX Pharmacists Series. How does it feel to be a PGX pharmacist?
It feels so good and still a little unreal. So I'm very honored to be a part of this, and I cannot wait to share what's inside my brain.
Awesome. Well, I know that from listening to other podcasts featuring you and from knowing you for a year or so on LinkedIn, that you and I share a common history with community practice pharmacy. So you know what it's like to not necessarily love your job and want to move on to something else. So can I just get a quick explanation of how long did you work and where? And I just want anybody who has not met you yet to understand where you come from.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So before I created my company, I was a pharmacist for more than 10 years at Walgreens. And that was the only job I ever had as a pharmacist, was just staff pharmacist at Walgreens out here in Utah.
Yep. And I did the same thing. I was 9 years, though, at Walgreens, although I did work for a hospital before that, and I've had some jobs since. But so you know how sometimes you have a job and you just do it because that is what you have thrown your hat in the ring to do. And eventually you want to move on. So what made you want to move on to pharmacogenomics?
Well, I did a very dangerous thing, and I created a LinkedIn account right at the beginning of the pandemic. And once I saw what was possible for a pharmacist to do, I couldn't go back. And I knew I was capable of so much more, because I think the reason I stayed in a stuck position for so long was just because I didn't know what was available and what I could do. I just kept endlessly applying for jobs of similar positions and not going anywhere, and seeing how much opportunity there were and how many other pharmacists using their voice to do amazing things. I was a goner. I couldn't go back.
And now you have something like 15,000 connections on LinkedIn. Wow. Do those people seek you out, or do you seek those connections?
Isn't that crazy? I'm so excited. And I am just really excited because most of these people are seeking me out. I consistently reach out to new people I want to model myself after and who I aspire to be. But consistently showing up and sharing my voice has drawn a bit of a following, which has been really rewarding and something that's been fun for me to see as someone who started a LinkedIn account not even 2 years ago and had 0 followers and didn't even know anyone to connect to show how available it is to find your tribe and to find people with similar ideas. It's a great time to be a pharmacist and looking for new big ideas, because there's great people out there willing to share.
Absolutely. And it took you how many years to go from 0 to 15,000?
Oh, like 18 months.
That is impressive. That is impressive.
I just really like sharing my voice, Kim, and just consistent action, as simple as that, like consistently showing up on a platform and having conversations and sharing my ideas. When done consistently and over time, it has results. So it's been really rewarding that it hasn't been anything I've done that's paid, like advertising or anything. It's just something that's grown organically. That's been really rewarding. This little pharmacist like me with 0 experience doing anything cool is able to start some fun conversations.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on all your success, all your connections. And now I want to dive into the pharmacogenomics piece of this. I understand that there's 2 things that really happen with pharmacogenomics. You have to learn the science and the application of it to the world of pharmacy, but then you also need to learn how to use business skills to sell those services. Can you tell me a little bit about how'd you get educated on each of those, the science and the business?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. So the science was pretty simple and straightforward. There's a number of certificate programs that can get you up to speed pretty quickly on the science. And so I've taken a couple of those within a matter of weeks. I felt like, okay, this really is just glorified pharmacy school. I actually know this, even though I didn't know that I did. And where the real trial and error came was going out to my community to build something like this, to start a practice, to start seeing patients without much hand-holding, because in this space for pharmacist entrepreneurs, all the information I could really find was geared toward pharmacy owners and that very traditional path. But I did not want to start a brick and mortar pharmacy. I did not want to go down that path. And so it really was just me showing up every day and failing a lot and learning from what worked and learning a lot more from what didn't work, and just still pushing forward every single day and talking to everyone who would talk with me, who were 1 or 5 steps ahead of me. So the science for me, it dusted off my brain a little. It was good for me to stretch and learn it, but really where the boots hit the ground and I was building the business was what took so much time and effort.
I bet. Yeah, it's something new, but you have to get curious about it and figure it out. And it sounds like you did.
Yes. And it's been really fun to figure out and to create something that didn't exist before in my life.
Now, how'd you learn how to develop a business? How'd you learn how to start a business? Is that something you already knew how to do? Or was that kind of the scary thing for you, kind of like it was for me? Like you think a big deal is just forming an LLC at the beginning and you realize that's small potatoes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what was the scary and really exciting part, was the actual business aspect. So I worked with my small business administration office out here in Utah. They have great resources. And especially as women business owners, I connected with the Women Business Center of Utah, and they have a lot of free resources and help. And so I just took all the help I could get, and especially within my community. And really, it's not that hard. It just feels scary and intimidating when there's no one that I could talk with that's doing this like necessarily within the healthcare space. So definitely moved out of my what's the word?
Comfort zone.
Comfort zone. Yes, moved out of my comfort zone, did scary things every day, and I still do, and it's okay.
Yes. Yeah. Feel the fear and do it anyway, right? I've heard that phrase, and that sounds like what you did. Now, I understand that you have the PGX Consulting Confidence Academy. I can never say that fast. PGX Consulting Confidence Academy. How did you come up with that? Because I imagine that you went into private practice as a pharmacogenomics pharmacist first, and then you ended up with the academy. So I guess, could you tell me a little bit about both private practice and then the academy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So once I found the doctors I was working with and they got me into their clinic and I started seeing their patients and getting into a really nice rhythm, then of course I was sharing that on LinkedIn. And a number of pharmacists reached out to me privately and said, "Hey, can you teach me what you're doing? This is exactly what I want to do. Will you coach me and help me?" And I definitely want to help other people, and felt like, well, this process I went through really isn't unique to me. Any pharmacist could do this too. So I'd love to help. However, my time is very limited, seeing a caseload of patients, as well as having 4 young boys at home. So I had to be smart about how I spent my time and knew I couldn't just work one-on-one with people individually, starting from scratch every time. So I just got a subscription to a course platform. I use Kajabi, and I just dumped my brain and all of my processes into a course. And I started it as a little beta course with 10 pharmacists who knew that this was kind of a new experiment to see if it worked, to see their feedback and make sure it was valid material. And after they went through all of it and gave me great feedback, then they were like, "This is amazing. You should share it with everyone." And so then I was able to really fine tune it and polish it now that it had been validated and verified, and then share it out with the world. So it's been really rewarding to be able to share my brain and my knowledge without taking a huge amount of my time.
I love the story. I mean, it's a success story. I've heard great things about your earnings. I am a Kajabi user myself too. That is how I created my online course. And I think I saw, excuse me, I think I saw on some Kajabi site where they were saying this pharmacist made 6 figures with her online course. And I don't know if it's okay for me to say that. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I'm so proud of it.
Wow. I mean, my course, I think, has a different kind of an audience. So it's not really a 6-figure earning course, but congratulations. That is amazing.
Thank you. It just goes to show that living in 2022, we work differently, we educate differently. And to have something valuable that other people want to learn, it just makes so much sense to be able to share it in such a universal way that really, once you make the investment of your time, putting it into it and creating it, then while I'm sleeping, while I'm on vacation, I'm teaching people and helping. And it's such a fun time to be alive in 2022. It feels crazy to ignore these resources and not use them.
Amen. I don't know about you, but one of my favorite things is when I go to bed and I wake up in the morning, somebody's bought my course while I slept. And it's like, you have a deposit. It's like, cool.
It's the best feeling ever. And this is part of why I wanted to build a business, to break free from where we were both stuck, where I'm only earning money if I'm clocked in and physically at a location, because there's a ceiling. You can only earn as much as you are physically present in the building. And as a mom and as a parent, it just felt so limiting that my earnings would always be tied to the amount of time I was at work. So I know business owners do really well because they're willing to take the risk and to create things that didn't exist. And I agree with you. When you wake up and you see that you've made money while you're sleeping, it still feels unreal. It is delightful.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that could happen until the first time it happened. I'm like, oh, doesn't it only happen when I'm awake? No, people are buying that from around the world while I'm sleeping. So that's pretty cool.
It really is. It's delightful.
Awesome. Well, speaking of time and time management and all this, we definitely have to sleep, and there's always people that are not sleeping that are learning from us. But during our waking hours, Jamie, we only have so much time to actually work on things. And I am curious, how much time do you spend in the clinic doing pharmacogenomics as a pharmacist versus being a mom versus updating your course? How does that work?
That's a good question. So recently, I actually just left private practice with my patients and I'm passing it off to one of my students.
Oh,
because it was growing so quickly. This online course is growing so much. I'm like, wow, I'm going to have a pharmacist out here in Utah take over this practice who wants it. And then I can keep leaning into this course, as well as 2 other companies that I've since started. And
do tell.
It's been really fun. So I also started Own Your PharmD with Dr. Karen Brown, which is really about entrepreneurship just for PharmDs in general, who maybe outside of PGX, who want to get into business building and to strategize on to how to actually make it profitable and successful. So that's been really fun. Now I'm turning into a serial entrepreneur, Kim. Once I see how fun it is to create something that didn't exist and help people.
I've told people it's like a disease, and you want your friends to have the disease too.
Yes.
The disease is called entrepreneurship. Yes. Once you start a business, you want everybody else to start a business. Oh, that's a great idea. You should do that. And yep, I feel you.
And everywhere you go, you see ideas. I'm like, that could be a business. I see a problem. Someone should start this business. Oh man, you're right. It spirals and it's crazy, but it's also it's just a different way of looking at the world that I never knew before.
Yes, I would agree. Yep. And you're so bright and happy about it. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, what is your work week like? I tell people all the time, I only work about 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday, if the kids are even in school, which we had a school delay today. So that definitely cut into my work day. What is your work day like?
So I work 3 days a week. I work Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and they're really busy days. So I start at 5 a.m. and work till 7 p.m. so that when I'm at work and the kids are at school and taken care of, I just get as much done as possible. So I start at 5 a.m. and hit the ground running and get all of my most important projects done in the morning hours. I always reserve morning hours for myself and my projects, and then have afternoons for meetings. And having a limited work schedule really makes me focus on what's actually going to move my company forward versus what's just going to keep me busy or doing things, but not necessarily productive. And so it's been really rewarding to structure my time like that so I can block work with work and then off with being off. So I can enjoy hanging out with my kids, because I did not go into business to work 100 hours a week and to be crazy stressed. So it's really rewarding to be able to choose to have whole days off with my kids and with my family and to just enjoy doing things I like to do, because life is short and we also have to actually enjoy what we're doing instead of breaking our backs to try to hit this amazing business goal and have kind of closed vision to everything else.
Thank you for sharing that. You have to set your own vision for what you want your life to be like when you're an entrepreneur, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's important to know because like you just said, if you're not careful, then you're going to end up working 100 hours a week. So you have to set that vision. I only want to work this, and when I'm off, I'm off. And I think that's great. That's very healthy. I love that you have boundaries.
Yes. And it's something that I have struggled with and has been a process because when you're self-employed, suddenly your time is available. So you can work in nights and weekends, and there's no boundary like clocking in and out to a physical retail store anymore. When you're on, you're on, you're off, you're off. So I was working way more and feeling spread too thin. And so it's not like I've got it all figured out, but every day I get better and better. And it's rewarding to feel like I have control over my schedule and I have control over my life.
Now, when it comes to your online academy, is it 100%, I guess, videos where people just learn as they want, or are there certain days that they have to show up to an an online class of some sort? So what's that like?
Oh yeah. So it's an online self-paced course. So they can go through the material as quickly as they want. So you can digest the whole thing in 6 weeks and go gangbusters on it. Or we have other moms who are just logging in for an hour once or twice a week during nap time and slowly building their business over the course of a year. And so that aspect is very self-paced, very up to the individual. But where the magic really happens is when we meet together once a week. I bring guest expert interviews or just have Q&A with me where we're really hashing out, what are you working on this week? What's been a success? What's a stumbling block? And then we're all learning from individual experiences. And that's part of what's so rewarding of having a course is that we all have now we're speaking the same language. We all have laid the same foundation. So when we come together, it's really strategic on what we can build rather than, okay, what is pharmacogenomics? What's a good lab to work with? And having to start from square one. When you can teach people that in the background, then when you meet together, you can do so much with your time. So it is very interactive once a week, as well as we have a private social media group where every day you can go in and share your questions, share your wins, share your obstacles, and I'm there and everyone else is there to cheer you on. So it's as interactive as you want it to be. And it's really fun to get to know people on a more personal level too, instead of strictly business building 101.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that you have a community and there's some interaction, and it can be both sciencey and nerdy, but then also, celebratory too, like celebrating one another's wins.
Thank you. We love having such a close private community of other people who really get what we're doing and that it's really an uplifting place to be. Because as you probably know, Kim, entrepreneurship can be lonely when you don't have that team that you're used to working with. And especially if the colleagues that you're working with don't understand what you're doing, especially as you start building it, it can make you feel discouraged. And so this group is very inspiring and uplifting and really helping each other because they're 1 step, 5 steps, 10 steps ahead and are willing to share all of their resources and what they've learned. So really, it's an awesome community that's moving everyone forward faster because we're all working together and so collaborative, and it's not competitive at all.
That's excellent. Now, I live in the Northwest Ohio area, and I know that you have students probably from all over, right? Can you tell me, like, how many students do you have, and are they in all 50 states? I'm just curious about, how many emerging pharmacogenomics pharmacists are out there?
So at this point, we have 170 pharmacists, and we're in almost every state and in 5 countries. So we're growing, and the day we're in every single state, we're going to celebrate because it's really exciting.
Yeah, heck yeah, that's exciting. I remember when I started my podcast, I kept waiting for West Virginia to get on board. Come on, West Virginia. For whatever reason, I did not have any listeners in West Virginia for the longest time. But eventually somebody listened to it. And now I can say I've had listeners in all 50 states and something like 49 countries. It's pretty cool.
Isn't that amazing? Because you chose to share your voice, that you just don't know how it's going to grow or where it's going to grow. it's so amazing. And it is such a good reason to share your voice. I'm glad you're in all those countries. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I don't necessarily interact with them, but anybody listening to this podcast that would like to reach out, I do have a contact form on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. So check that out. Send me a message. But anyways, back to you and your online course and everything. I am curious if you teach the science and the business, or is it just the business of pharmacogenomics?
Oh, it's just the business of pharmacogenomics. There's so many really good science programs out there. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Our goal is to take you and get you profitable and changing patients' lives and actually doing it, because that's where I felt the limitation of the science was great. You have this brain full of knowledge, you know what to do. Now, are you just going to spend all your time scrolling on LinkedIn for a job with PGX in the title? No, like you got to do something with it. And it takes a grassroots effort, especially as pharmacy is going through a huge transition and our roles are changing. They're going away from product-based roles to knowledge-based. And this is like the epitome of a knowledge-based role, in my opinion. And so it does take some creation and coming from a grassroots area that it's not necessarily just going to be handed to us, which makes it so exciting.
It is exciting. It's the wild, wild west.
It
right?
really is. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you have a really good handle on the business of it, because I know from changing industries, actually, being a pharmacist who went to be a voice actor, I had to talk to people that could teach me the performance, the audio engineering, the business, everything. And they're all kind of separate. So I don't see it as a bad thing or a good thing. It's neither good nor bad that you teach just the business part. Somebody's got to do it. And I'm glad that you're out there and you've got students that are successful and sharing what they are achieving in your Facebook group. That's awesome. If anybody wants to join your PGX Consulting Confidence Academy, how would they do that?
So they go to PGX Consulting Confidence Academy.com, and I have a free training that shows more of the details of the inside of the course, the success of some of our students, and how available consulting is for a pharmacist. Go through that training. If it's interesting to you, at the end, my team shares the link to book a call, and we'd love to talk with you to really see if this makes sense for your unique situation. And we'll talk it out. And if it sounds right, then we'll get you on board and jumping right into the material.
That sounds easy enough.
It really is.
Yeah. And do you mind if I ask the cost, the investment rather?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the goal is to have a return on investment within several months if you're willing to do the work. And it varies based on your situation, but it's around $4,000 to $5,000 for a year.
Okay. And it's an annual cost. It's not a monthly cost, correct?
It's an annual cost, but we can split it into monthly payments if that makes it easier for your cash flow.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Jamie, I want to ask you a question about within your program. There is probably a lot of content. Is there a certain amount that you can say you could quantify, like this course will take you 4 hours to go through, for example? How long does it usually take a student?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So there's at this point about 160 lessons, and in total, probably about 50 hours of content. And it just keeps growing, Kim, because every week when we have a new lecture from an expert, I add it to the content and add it to the library. So it just keeps growing and growing and growing, because you find out the more you learn, the more you want to know. So it's very dynamic and growing and expanding.
Well, that sounds like an exciting opportunity, but at the same time, that's intimidating, if you don't mind my saying. So how does one know what they actually bare bones need to do to get up and started just at first without listening to all 50 hours?
Oh, yes. So I have my 12-step consulting system all mapped out in a PDF that's 2 pages that the new enrollees get to check out to have as their simple 2-page blueprint. And I also have created a course workbook that gives them like a 30,000-foot overview of everything that we're going to cover, where they can find it, and what's most important to begin with, so that they can navigate it quickly and easily rather than just starting in right through the weeds and not seeing the start from the finish. So it's definitely not required that you have to listen to all of that, but you find the more you know, the more you want to know. But that's our easiest way to have everyone organized and give you kind of a compass for what you're going to learn and how you're going to find it. And so you can go to what you're most interested in first, whether it be thinking like an entrepreneur versus how to talk to prescribers and patients versus business building 101.
That's very smart. It's excellent for the user experience so that they understand. I like the compass term that you used. If you know where your north is, then you can figure everything else out, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, if you don't mind, I think we'll move away from your Pharmacogenomics Academy and talk a little bit about some other things. I understand that you are now a co-host on the Pharmacy Podcast Network for the PGX for Pharmacists podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about your involvement with that? Because you're truly using your voice there.
That's such a rewarding place to be able to use my voice, because Todd Urey, the founder of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, invited me to be a co-host for this podcast. So it's definitely not my baby. It's something I get to stand on the shoulders of giants who've created it. At this point, I think there's 4 different co-hosts, and we all take a different angle of PGX and how we approach it and bringing it to pharmacists. And Kim, it's been so successful that it's the 9th most downloaded genetics podcast in the whole world. And that just shows how interested people are in personalized medicine and how available it is to spread your voice to the rest of the world.
Yeah. What do you talk about on your little slice of the podcast?
My angle is more personal and bringing it really to patients and to pharmacists' lives and saying, this is a great theory. There's all of the value that comes with it. Now I'm here. I have a loved one who's suffering, or I'm a pharmacist who wants to actually do this. How do we do this and actually make it roll out? Or hearing from patients who have gone through the process and seen benefit to hear their story. Because I love hearing their voice and their experience, because that's why we're going to all this effort and talking about it, is to really help patients in a more personalized way.
I have had Nancy Gettel-Syed on this podcast too, and I understand she is one of the co-hosts as well. And I had told her when we spoke for our podcast interview that it would be awesome if pharmacists and patients could somehow write in or call in and talk to all of the co-hosts of this podcast with their questions, because again, we talked about pharmacogenomics is kind of the wild, wild west, and people have questions. So do you do anything like that yet?
Not yet, but I think that's great feedback and a great idea, because you're right. The more you share, then the more questions that come up of, okay, I'm interested. How could this work for my unique situation? So I love that feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're quite welcome. And I hope that it continues to be a successful podcast. Being ranked as the number 9 podcast in that space internationally, did you say? Or nationally? Internationally, that's validating that pharmacogenomics is interesting. There are people following it and they want to know more. So I hope that the connection between the co-hosts and the audience is definitely made even stronger and tighter, because really the more that you find out what other people's problems are, the more that you can sell them solutions.
Exactly. And it's just a testament to getting your voice out that me, this girl from Walgreens who didn't even know the word pharmacogenomics 3 years ago, can come so far and share my voice and have a piece to say without having a PhD in pharmacogenomics is amazing. And it's great to feel confident to share our voices. And it's something I see so often in pharmacies. We just don't feel like we're enough. We don't have the X, Y, and Z credentials to be quote unquote enough, but to own what we have and what we've learned, that's a value to someone who's 5 steps behind us.
That's right. Now, when it comes to, I guess, recruiting students, why do some make the leap and some don't?
Some make the leap because they want control over their future and they want the flexibility that they know only being a business owner can provide. Some don't because they're so scared of risk and worry about the logistics of owning a business. But for me, it feels like there's no risk and all reward when you're building a consulting business that really doesn't take a lot of capital. It doesn't take a lot of investment like a brick and mortar or a product-based model does. What you're really spending is your time. And you can probably attest to this too. As you really roll out a business, you grow so much personally and professionally that it kind of affects all areas of your life, that you just become better and see more potential and feel more confident in so many different areas of your life, that at least for me, it wasn't just siloed. And so some pharmacists are scared and don't want to deal with that. But those who are saying enough is enough, I've dealt with a terrible work situation for too long, I know I'm capable of more. It's really fun to see them take the leap and jump with faith.
Yeah. The reason I brought that up, even though we had moved on to podcasting, is that I was kind of curious. Is that something you talk about, those mindset issues, taking the leap and all that on the podcast?
No, we don't talk about it on the podcast, but you're just planting some seeds now, Kim. I think we absolutely should, because really before you can actually do anything, you have to get your brain on board and feel like you can do it. And so many people don't, just because of limiting beliefs in their heads. So I'm going to write that down right now to explore for a future episode. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to give some input. I'm not trying to take over your podcast, but as a fellow podcaster, one of my jobs is to anticipate questions that the audience might have. There are people who are tuning into this 4-part series to find out more about pharmacogenomics. They want to know, how do I learn about the science? How do I get the business skills? And then I'm just anticipating that there are some people that don't know how to make the leap, when to make the leap, and have these mindset issues. So just to know that in the future, they can tune into you and maybe catch some details about that. That is helpful. So
it really is.
I wish you luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you have such a great attitude too. You are one of the most positive people that I have ever met. One of the most positive pharmacists for sure. But you're always just upbeat every time I see you. You're just excited to be part of whatever it is that we're together with, whether it's a mom's group thing that we're talking at, or if it's a podcast I'm listening to. You're on fire to be there. So what is your inspiration for this positive attitude?
It's just more fun to be happy than to be sad. And I don't know. I just like being happy, and those negative thoughts even come to me, and I have to every day push them away. And it's just more rewarding. You can do more when you're a happy person, and you just feel, I don't know, so much more capable when you focus on the positive than focusing on the negative. I don't know. I'm not good at being grumpy. I don't like it.
I think I've heard that it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile. Have you ever heard that?
I've heard it. I have heard it.
You're very practiced at using your smiling muscles, and that's good to see. I know that people can't see you because this is a podcast, but they can hear the smile in your voice. It's authentic.
Well, I really think it's a great time to be alive, and it's fun to share that voice, because for so long, it felt like a miserable place to be a pharmacist, that we're this profession that has golden handcuffs and all of these walls are closing for us and jobs are being eliminated and blah, blah, blah. It felt like, oh man, did I make a mistake with this huge investment in my education and like pigeonholing myself into such a unique niche of knowledge? But so we have to hear positivity. There's more than enough negativity coming at us. You need positive voices as a profession so we can actually adapt and meet the needs of the future rather than just crumpling into what used to be.
Yes, let's not dwell, shall we? Let's not dwell.
Let's go forward boldly.
Awesome. Jamie, we talked a little bit about your PGX Consulting Confidence Academy. We talked about podcasting. I know that you use your voice in another way, a big way, as a mom. So can I get a little bit of advice for aspiring moms or current moms about a lot of things? Like, how do you handle work and family, and how do you make time for everything? Do you have any words of wisdom for moms out there?
Oh, moms are amazing. We can do anything, truly. I keep saying, like, if you want someone to get something done, ask a busy mom. They will do it, and they will do it efficiently. And I think that's why I've been able to do what I've done, because I have very limited time. I have 4 kids under the age of 10, all boys. My life is chaos. I live in a circus. So I can only work on what is important and what's going to move me forward. I just don't have time or bandwidth to like dilly-dally or be a perfectionist. Like, I'm going to take the minimum viable product and run with it every time. And just having that mindset of, it's fine. It's fine if life is messy and chaotic. Don't use that as an excuse. Run with what you have, because at least for me, what I found is the more I create and do what I love and am filled, and I'm filling my cup and I'm so happy with what I've created, then it bleeds over in my family. And I'm actually like a way happier mom who's empowering their kids and telling them to dream bigger and to expect great things of them. That before I may have had the conversation say about their careers, like, oh, you really need to get that degree and have that really traditional route that I myself followed. Now I'm like, you can do anything. You're amazing. Use those unique skills and help the world in a unique way. And so as a mom, it's been really rewarding to do business, and raising 4 boys. I like to feel like I'm my girl power over here, showing men what women can do and raising them to expect women to be high performing and to not for a second feel like they have an advantage because of their gender.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you feel like you have any sort of a balance in your life between the business and the family? Because it seems to me from the outside that you're killing it. You're doing great. How do you feel though?
I feel really good. It's taken a long time, years, to get to this point, because for so long I was the bottleneck of my business and everything had to go through me, and I hadn't built systems and processes so I could grow. So I was checking my email at the dinner and putting the kids to bed and then working until 11 o'clock at night, and felt like, well, I'm growing this business, but I'm kind of sacrificing my family. So to make the hard changes to actually grow, to do the things to get me where I wanted to be, has been hard, but it's also been good because it makes me do the hard things that allow you to grow. And now, because I can enjoy, like, it's Fridays off. I'm not even working today. This is the only work thing I'm doing is this podcast. And so it is very rewarding that once you build those systems and processes and a team, that you can have more flexibility too.
Thank you for sharing that. It's all positive. Can you tell me, if you could talk to yourself 10 years ago, more like 9 years ago, when you were becoming a mom and you were working full-time for Walgreens, right?
Yeah.
What advice would you give yourself?
I would say, start putting your voice out there. Start telling the world your thoughts and what you're thinking. And even if you don't know what your thing is in life or your agenda or your even a business, just start putting your voice out there and letting people know that who you are, what you can share, and start getting it out there, because the world is your oyster, and never has everyone been so accessible through social media and online presence to hear your voice. So even if I didn't know what I was going to do and pharmacogenomics wasn't even on the radar, I would say back 10 years ago, like, create a blog, start sharing your voice and see where that goes and lean into that, because I just didn't know I could. I felt like I had to be an expert at something and have this great thing before I could then share it, where now I know, just start sharing your thoughts and ideas. It's a magic and amazing.
That's a fair statement. Yeah, just share your voice, even if you haven't, what everybody else would say, made it yet. I agree with that. That's why I have a journey style podcast. My solo episodes, I talk about my journey from pharmacist to voice actor and podcast host. And then when it comes to the interviews, I share how other people use their voices. We all need to be inspired. But yeah, I love that you said we all need to share our voices, because, hey, I think you're kind of preaching to the choir here.
And it's true. Like, you never know what's going to resonate with people. So even if you're just sharing your experience and your voice, just cultivating that community of shared experiences and uplifting other people it's just great. And it's a great outlet for you and what you love that creates something for yourself. Because especially on the topic of moms and parenting, it's so easy to pour all of you into either your work box or your family and kid box. And then it's harder to put time aside for yourself and leaning into like who you are and what you love. And if you can cultivate that, then all aspects of your life have that benefited ripple effect.
Well, speaking of using your voice, have you been invited to be a speaker at any conferences or anything like that yet?
Not yet, but it's coming, Kim. I'm expecting those invitations because we're creating waves. We're doing great things. And that's really where I want to go next, is to get into more speaking engagements. I've never done it before. I don't know how to get started. I'll be honest about it, but I know that if I keep doing what I'm doing, it's guaranteed to come, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, well, I could definitely see you talking at some conferences, especially from the angle of being a teacher of the business aspect of entrepreneurship. Because let's face it, pharmacists, we really like lists. We like clear plans, like take one POBID times 7 days and then your infection will go away. I mean, it's just what we like. It all makes sense. We love things that make sense. And if you are what I call a guide with a plan, you are somebody who has created this academy and you have all of your compass, okay? And you're telling people you start here and you go through these videos and eventually you're going to be able to run your business. People need to hear that. So anyways, I think that you could easily be a speaker at a conference. So put yourself out there.
I will. And it's fun to do brave things and to say, I don't know how to get to point Z, but I know what point B is. So I'm just going to take the next step and start telling the world that this is what I want to do, and then start asking for advice. And anyway, domino effects fall. So thank you for your confidence in me, Kim.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm trying to cheer you on. I hope I'm not in your head too much here, talking out loud, all this stuff. But, when you see another pharmacist mom who's really achieving something very interesting and willing to come on the podcast and talk about pharmacogenomics, which is what this series is about, you want to give something back. That's how I feel right now. So I hope you don't mind me, suggesting podcast stuff and public speaking stuff, but I think you're killing it. And I appreciate you being on the podcast today to share how you use your voice. This is awesome.
And I love your voice and your ideas, because I love learning and soaking up any advice from other people. I only take it as positive, and it's going to be great. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Well, Jamie, are there any other ways that you use your voice that I haven't covered yet? Any surprises?
Not yet, but gosh, the rate I'm going, there will be 10 more by next year. So that's keeping me plenty busy. I'm always looking for ways to expand our reach and empower our, not only profession, but women as well. So nothing yet, but it'll be changing.
As we wrap this up, can you tell me, is there anything else you'd like to share? Maybe websites, social media handles, anything that I can put in the show notes for our listeners?
The PGX Consulting Confidence Academy.com is where you can see my live webinar and a lot more information. If this is interesting to you and you're like, I'd love to create my own consulting practice, check it out. That's our first stop. If you're just interested to hear my many thoughts, I'm always sharing on LinkedIn. Connect with me, Dr. Jamie Wilkey, on LinkedIn.
Jamie, thank you so much for sharing how you use your voice here on the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. This has been an honor. You too, Kim. See ya.
All right. Take care. Bye. I'd like to share 2 final thoughts with you. Jamie is certainly a smart and determined pharmacist entrepreneur. What really resonated with me is how Jamie used the power of networking and her love of helping others to fuel her business endeavors. It is downright inspiring to me when someone combines what they love to do with what they're good at, what the world needs, and what they can get paid to do, all while still hanging on to what they value, which for Jamie included more time with family. She certainly seems and sounds fulfilled, and it was a pleasure hearing how she uses her voice to advocate for pharmacogenomics and educate other pharmacists on building their PGX businesses. One final thought here. Jamie talked about getting help from the SBA, otherwise known as the U.S. Small Business Administration. I second that suggestion. In December 2016, I started my business journey with help from the Women's Economic Opportunity Center at the Northeast Indiana Innovation Center in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Here's some backstory. I live in Northwest Ohio, and my area did not have any local support for women entrepreneurs through the SBA back in 2016. The nearest SBA offices that specifically supported women-owned businesses were in Cleveland, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, and Fort Wayne, Indiana. Since I was just having phone conversations at first, Fort Wayne seemed like as good a choice as any. I got solid advice from the mentor I spoke to, and we never met in person. That was pre-pandemic, and we still didn't meet in person. And you know what? You might find this interesting. She wasn't even a pharmacist. She was a baker. But she knew how to start a business and gave me some practical advice. Later on, I got connected to SCORE, which is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. I was able to work face-to-face with 2 mentors who live right here in the town where I live, for free. They weren't pharmacists either. They gave me some practical advice and asked helpful questions, which I needed to answer in order to push my business forward. After working with my SCORE mentors, I moved on to other coaches and mentors who were more in line with what I do now, which is voiceover work, audiobook narration, and podcasting. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and yours can too. I hope Jamie inspired you today. I'll put a link to the SBA and SCORE in the show notes. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for listening to my final thoughts, and thank you for listening to episode 139 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Please visit thepharmacistvoice.com to read the show notes. I'll have links to Dr. Jamie Wilkey on LinkedIn, the PGX Consulting Confidence Academy, the SBA, SCORE, and my interviews with Dan Krinsky, Sue Paul, and Mariam S. Yassin in the show notes. If you know someone who might like this episode, please share it with them. And subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player to get each new episode delivered to your smartphone every time a new episode comes out. Thank you again for listening.